Bonsoir. My name is Manon Globensky, and I'm going to talk about national unity. But to start my look forward on how unified we are at the end of this anniversary year, I want you to look at one event which might have been an omen for events in more recent weeks. I give you Canada Day 2017. Do you remember it? Very wet, very muddy. In particular, I'm referring to the speech by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that day, an uplifting 17 minutes where he underlined that we're all Canadians even though we're so diverse. And 12 minutes into the speech, boom, the mistake of forgetting Alberta when he was naming every other province and territory. Of all the possible provinces to forget, Alberta, with the Trudeau's history of with the province. Word of the mistake spread quicker than a brush fire on social media, but the Prime Minister was also quick. He came back to the microphone and he had a very good-hearted, "Love you, Alberta." I guess that by now you understand why I said this was ominous. Not because of the memes that said, even weeks after the speech, that Justin was not welcome at the Stampede, which he did attend after initially saying his schedule was not allowing him to go this year. I'm referring to this. Alberta is the new thorn in Canada's side. Quebec? Oubliez. The new question for Canadian unity is, what does Alberta want? See how the roles are reversed. My home province, which is going through an election this year, I should say the Liberal government of my home province, is now proposing constitutional talks to bring Quebec back into the fold. There's no deadline to that proposal. Provinces welcomed it with a very polite meh. Mr. Trudeau offered a terse no to the idea of reopening the Constitution, but said he was eager to discuss what could be a better federation. Andrew Scheer, the new Conservative leader, when he was in Quebec City a few weeks ago, tried to counter the Prime Minister by saying his party's 2019 electoral platform would echo some of Quebec's demands, although he never said if it would mean reopening the Constitution. Mr. Scheer prefers making a reference to the practical things that his party could do for Quebec. But I digress, because national unity these days isn't about Quebec like it used to be. So let's go back to Alberta and what it wants. In order to deal with this question, we have to think not only of who's in power in Alberta right now, Rachel Notley and her NDP, but also of the opposition, the newly minted United Conservative Party and its new leader, Jason Kenney. One could be tempted to perpetuate the stereotype of an ailing economy brought down by sinking oil prices that has its claws out to protect itself, but that's not true anymore. In 2018, Alberta is forecasted to lead every other Canadian province but British Columbia in economic growth. Unemployment is down, the construction sector is picking up, and the energy sector is back, thanks mostly to a lowering of their break-even costs. What is true, though, is that Alberta is still licking its wounds. The only PST-free province has had to run a deficit year after year, and its very low debt per capita ratio is on the rise. I don't think I'm going out on a limb if I say that it's a desire to avoid such an economic trauma in the future that is making Albertans push back against interference by either Ottawa or a neighboring province. So much for unity. Premier Notley is determined to secure routes to deliver bitumen to markets, and it seems that the unique option of TransCanada's Keystone XL is not enough. After Energy East was nixed and Northern Gateway folded, the doubling of Kinder Morgan's Trans Mountain pipeline became the best short-term possibility. The battle that looms is very Canadian, two neighboring provinces, a federal government arguing over where one's competence begins and the other one's ends. We now know that BC made the goodwill gesture of sending that very question to the courts. Thus, the Alberta boycott of BC wines is over, and there might still be some lingering damage from that two-week confrontation. One example, the cornerstone policy of the Trudeau government to reach its greenhouse gas reduction goals is to impose a price on pollution, what we call carbon pricing. Even though Alberta already has carbon pricing and expects to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions with it, it will not be sufficient to reach the goal. Using electricity, especially hydroelectricity, which has no emissions, would help, but the spat over Kinder Morgan had Ms. Notley cancel electricity buying talks with BC. There's no word as to whether they're back on. And consider that the Alberta leader of the opposition, Mr. Kenney, would, if elected, end what he calls the job-killing carbon tax altogether. He describes the federal government policy as an attack on his province and says that if Ottawa doesn't desist, he would hold a referendum to remove non-renewable resource revenues from equalization formula. Alberta is one of the contributing provinces to equalization, and that move, if at all possible, and that could be another court battle, would reduce the envelope redistributed to other provinces considerably. He's a very shrewd politician, Jason Kenney, and he knows that both environmental restrictions and equalization payments are hot-button issues in his province. In his Canada Day speech in Ottawa last July 1st, Prime Minister Trudeau said that the infrastructure that was developed at the beginning of Confederation to connect us all became the backbone of the country. Today, we can think of equalization or pipelines as such infrastructure, and therefore, the everybody for themselves attitudes are weakening the cement that holds us together. But at the beginning of this 151st year of the Canadian Federation, is it a threat to national unity? Justin Trudeau said during the Energy East debate, pitting West against East, we are much stronger than that. He might have a point, but if, as he said, it was compromises that led to a partnership of different provinces at the beginning of the country 150 years ago, then we have to keep working at it because compromises don't seem to be on the horizon, and if those compromises, and it is those compromises, I should say, that are the key to national unity in 2018 and beyond. Thank you.